discussions and also learn about Nigeria and like diplomacy and politics because I don't really know much about it.
Hi, I'm Samia. I'm just here to understand the challenges that Nigeria faces and how it impacts the rest of West Africa.
Hi, I'm Robin. I'm the speaker tonight, so I'm hoping not to disappoint any of your expectations and actually also to learn from what you want to talk about as well.
Hi, I'm Diana, Robin's wife. I'm here interested actually from what you all think, but also to give Robin feedback later.
My name is Saladi. I'm here to learn and also to, physically to learn. Thank you. Thank you very much, Saladi.
Oh yeah, my name is Adora, and my expectation is to meet every one of you. I'm looking forward to networking and meeting new faces.
Okay, so we're going to be calling on our main speaker, Mr. Robin. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, good evening again, everybody. I'm Robin, and welcome also to everybody who's online. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm going to thank, first of all, our CEO, Pastor Ayo, for the invitation, and Tolu and Adora for making it happen, basically. Thank you, and I think also being our moderator on the panel later, Adora. I'm also going to thank whoever found this photo of me, which is from some years ago, but nice to see my old self. Okay, so in fact, I haven't known Pastor Ayo too long, though it seems as soon as we met, we had many thoughts and interests in common. And I soon realised also he's not someone to whom it's easy to say no. So here I am when he invited me. Actually, I'm really welcoming this opportunity to meet with you all and look at issues which are of concern to all of us. I'm looking forward to hearing the panel's comments later and questions and comments in the room, which I'm sure is going to grace our time together. And actually, of all the comments, many that I picked up, taking Africa to the next level, that's a good one. We'll come back to that, I hope. So it's certainly an interesting day in global politics to be looking at these topics, with polling underway in a certain other country across the Atlantic. Also, as you know, the anniversary of a historic attempt to blow up the UK Parliament a few hundred years ago. And actually with our own new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, currently in Nigeria. Right. At least I think he was in Lagos yesterday, so maybe he's still there. And in a way, I'm going to come back and touch on each of those because I think it illustrates some of what I want to say. I'm really grateful for the wide range of topics which were flagged for me to address flowing from our discussions. That's either in a sense terrifying or it's an opportunity to cover a range of views based on your point of view. Dio knows these subjects are very close to my heart, and I think even from the round in the room so far, and I'm sure for those of you online, these are subjects close to your hearts too. So my plan is to lay out some thoughts and ideas for your consideration. To some extent, I'll talk about some of the bigger picture stuff. I heard references to diplomacy and politics. That's good. And then with the panel, all the questions and comments, we can drill down into some of the detail as well. Now, I'm going to be speaking from my own personal experience in the public and private sectors, including as a British diplomat for over 25 years. And much of that was spent on either in Africa or dealing with issues affecting Africa. And then since 2014, so just over 10 years ago, I left the Foreign Office and we founded a small consultancy business looking at opportunity and risk in Africa. In fact, as you've already heard, my business partner, also my wife, Diana, is gracing the occasion here tonight. I think that's the phrase. We've had 3 fantastic diplomatic postings in Kenya, Ghana and Lagos, which have helped shape my views tonight, as you'll hear, and also our family life, and very happy to talk more about that later if you wish. In fact, if you want to ask about diplomacy, there's two of us here, you can ask questions. Now, our common theme tonight is, of course, Nigeria and the Nigerian context, and I will return to that regularly. Nigeria is a globally significant country in a globally significant region and continent. And part of my case is the need for greater recognition of that and adjustment to it, especially from here in the UK. It'll also be good to look at what we, by which I mean you here in the room and our colleagues online, what we can do to help bring that out more. Now, by the way, when I say Africa in what follows, or even region, by which I usually mean West Africa in this context, I'm really conscious that we're talking about 50 or more countries, each of which is unique. So I am going to be trying to be careful to avoid unfounded generalizations. And where possible, I'm going to be specific about countries, even when I'm using them as an example of a wider point. Also, my aim is to offer you my best fact-based analysis with some experience thrown in, but not to make value judgments between different countries. I will be supporting certain ways of doing things in the political and economic spheres. And when in government, we often used to say that we supported principles and policies, but not people or parties. Obviously, UK government has to be neutral as between political operators abroad. And that's still a good basis when commenting on other countries. Although, having indulged in a bit of political activism myself since leaving government, and be a bit less on the fence, and possibly a bit more disloyal to my previous employer, the UK government. However, it's good to emphasise that what we're trying to work out is what works best and how we can apply that, rather than looking to criticise for the sake of it. Now, to give my talk a framework, I'm going to cover three broad areas. First of all, Nigeria's opportunity, what's going right. Secondly, the international framework for response. And thirdly, the diaspora opportunity. So all roads this evening start and end with Nigeria. That's no doubt appropriate because we're talking about a or the leading country on the continent by many different measures, both present and future. In my own time as head of the UK mission in Lagos in 2010 and 11, it really opened my eyes to the massive potential all around, as well as the fragilities and risks that came with it. Even the British government managed to take notice at that point with 8 ministerial visits to Nigeria in 2011, including that to then Prime Minister David Cameron. And the idea was to promote Africa as a new economic opportunity with trade replacing aid. That, by the way, was a new and genuinely well-meant script in those days. So has the promise borne fruit? Well, not so much, including from the UK side, and we'll look at that a bit more later. But first of all, let's look at the Nigerian side, what's gone well or not. Now, I think this brings us straight to the heart of a conundrum, what I could describe as the search for the Holy Grail, to use that phrase, in diplomatic and development terms. Where is the link between governance and growth? In other words, show me a country that's well governed politically, and also, therefore, growing strongly economically. There must be a discernible link, mustn't there? The trouble is, there are too few examples of that, including across the African continent, let alone the wider world. Even more frustratingly, there have been a number of examples of the reverse, i.e. countries which are growing economically despite poor governance. Often, of course, these have been rich in oil or natural resources, meaning that leaders have made money and kept the population under control without too much effort. Sometimes they've added a veneer of democratization with regular elections, as long as they weren't expected to lose. We've all heard, I know, the concept of the resource curse, and I think it's a very real thing that sometimes it's too easy for leaders, governments and countries to make money from one single resource rather than think more deeply about what's happening. Now, various global cycles and more recent shocks have caused many of the wheels on this model to wobble. I remember saying to a number of senior government people in Lagos all those years ago, 10 or 11 years, 13, that even the mighty oil couldn't be relied on forever. The evidence was already there in 2010-11, with the international oil companies beginning to reduce investment, and with the USA looking to ramp up its own domestic shale production. The US predictably went from being, I think, West Africa's main oil and gas importer to pretty much zero now, just in a few years. But the response from officials at that time was often a look of pity at this kind of incomprehensible perspective that I was putting over, that maybe the oil money would run out one day. And I recently read, sadly, that Nigeria's GDP did actually peak in 2014. By 2023, it was 1/3 down on that level. Sobering thought. So a better approach would have been to deliver the diversified economy that many oil-rich economies often talk about, for example, in agriculture, manufacturing, or IT and newer industries. But that in turn means not just overseeing a new bunch of vested interests, but working hard and intentionally to create business conducive environments for foreign and in-country investment. Time and again, since setting up my advisory business, our advisory business, over the last 10 years, I've seen boards and executives sitting in buildings here in London, looking to invest, but unable to find fertile commercial ground to create or grow projects, even when they were convinced of the potential and the opportunity. I'm talking about business basics such as the Forex regime, access to land, labour regulations, power and water. In some cases, even basic regulatory or legal frameworks need to be put in place first. There's a real example I have in mind of a solar investment in a West African country, which wasn't able to go ahead because there was no feed-in tariff available for the investor. They didn't actually know how much money they would generate from their investment. And Nigeria is not immune to these pressures. Again, I read a bit sadly, there's a South African chain of stores, not ShopRite, something like that, which is pulling out of its investments out of Nigeria. It is ShopRite, is it? Yeah. How sad is that? I mean, I'm sure there are lots of contributory factors, but you can't help thinking maybe the business environment wasn't right. So governments have a crucial and unique role also in providing secure and safe environments for their own citizens, as well as prospective foreign investors, visitors, tourists, etc. Again, there's a very clear and concerning correlation between insecurity and economic decline. The latest version of Mo Ibrahim's Hard-Hitting Index, I'm sure you're all very familiar with it, just published, shows that stagnation, which is his word, across Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, since 2022 has been due to insecurity and democratic backsliding. And it's no surprise or coincidence that violent groups, including international terrorist networks, can take root and flourish in ungoverned spaces, especially across increasing areas of the Sahel. I think we all know it's vital for functioning governments to push back, and that includes providing basic services for citizens as well as military protection. It's sad to read again today, although I think that in northern Ghana, although the government of Ghana has denied this, there's talk of terrorist groups operating in Ghana as a base back into Burkina Faso, in the same way that much of northern Nigeria has been destabilized already. Again, we can come back and talk about that in more detail later if you wish. Now, Nigeria will always certainly have the potential to lead the way forward, given its sheer size and the federal framework. One important angle, I think, is the scope for individual states to be leaders in the field. Many governors do engage in that, or say they will, and some have made a real difference. And I think it's a strong strategy to actually do at the state level what you want to see done at the federal level. I know you have some contacts in that regard. Maybe we can come back to that. Some of you may have worked out from the dates we were in Lagos, that actually we were there during the first and second term of former Governor Fashola. Now, I don't want to pin everything on one person, but he certainly made some positive waves with, if you remember, his re-election slogan in 2021, which was, "Pay your taxes and we'll fix the roads." Magic. So with that kind of approach, he raised the bar of what could be expected from a leader actually delivering competent government. The Lagos electorate returned him in 2011 with a landslide, and it seems that people given a free choice will back the person who brings tangible benefits. Now, if that's the case, how's the rest of the world doing? I said we'd look secondly at the international picture too. Now, sadly, we didn't have to be meeting on actual US election day 2024 to know that democracy and governance seem to be under siege everywhere. When the then candidate Trump announced in 2016 that he could only lose if the vote was rigged, it was a bleak day for anyone arguing around the globe for the importance of democratic values. That's not what you want a globally significant democratic partner to be transmitting. Since then, of course, the stakes have got higher and higher, especially in the USA today, and thoughts and prayers are appropriate for scenarios that could follow the close of polling there over the next few hours. However, I do believe that the underlying strengths of an established democratic system will pull through in the end, hopefully. Amen. That happened in the USA in January 21, although it did take a bit longer, a few more days to come right, perhaps, than could have been expected. We certainly can't and shouldn't take it for granted that this will always happen in any country, especially in the age of social media manipulation and all kinds of new challenges and divisions in our societies. Now, similarly in the UK over the past 10 years, many have said that Brexit and other events have caused political chaos, although not quite on the level of the gunpowder plot, perhaps. Personally, I'm a bit of an outlier on this one, and I'm happy to come back to it in discussion if anyone wants. For example, there certainly was chaos on the surface and even below the surface for many years, but also we saw the strengths of the UK's political system and our unwritten constitution actually asserting itself. How many people looking surprised? For example, I won't go on now, but we can come back to this, but for example, we've had, was it 3 Conservative Prime Ministers? Actually, here's a way to look at it. It's November 24. So if certain factors hadn't applied, we would still be we'd coming towards the end of Boris Johnson's first term of government. Think of it that way. Elected in December 19, he would have had to have had a general election by January 25. And there was a lot of talk at one point about how we were going to deconflict the UK election in the autumn of 2024 with the American election, which was always fixed for today, 5 November 24. So, wow, quite a lot happened, which changed those scenarios. But the point I'm making is, under our system, the way you become Prime Minister is that you are the leader of the biggest party in Parliament. And if you cease to command the confidence of your own party and of the House, you can no longer hold power. That is basically what happened 3 times, which is suboptimal, but it shows in a sense the system worked. So don't mishear me on this. I'm just saying that Brexit tested the UK system to its foundations, issues of second referendums, all kinds of things. But mercifully, so far we have come through it. And hopefully democratic traditions in other parts of the world will survive similar stresses. And also, I think the heart of all of us in the room here is to help to build such strength into systems around the world, including Nigeria, including other countries. So why is all this important? Partly because the whole basis of the democratic liberal model is under attack, including from within. Now, I am avoiding saying Western or such words because I believe we're talking about universal principles, freedom, choice, market economics, equality under the rule of law, which have shown their worth over the years. Where these systems are stuttering, it's allowed other governance models to put up opposing claims of validity. Usually, in my opinion, these suit the given rulers more than those they govern, to put it mildly. Unfortunately, they can also be wrapped up as what I would call seductive philosophies, such as non-interference in each other's domestic affairs or economic help without strings attached.
Okay.
But the main principle for me has always been to establish a principle of democratic accountability, so that those who are ruled have the chance freely and fairly and periodically to choose and even change their leaders. Where that doesn't apply, human flourishing seems to decline, even though it can be hidden or papered over for years sometimes by seeming economic growth. The development of the BRICS grouping is an example in point. I'm certainly not here to criticise that, but I will say that wherever the core members are heading, I hope that those who are allowing themselves to be drawn in increasingly as partner countries, which does now include Nigeria and Uganda, well as Ethiopia already, I hope those countries are keeping their eyes wide open about what they're being drawn into. I do also think there's a lot of room for the UK and similar countries to upgrade our own engagement, regardless of the political party in power. As I said, it's great that David Lammy is in Nigeria and I think South Africa this week. Though over the years and regardless of party, there's been too little high-level engagement by the UK compared to most of our G7 or even G20 comparators. One of my own drivers for leaving government service 10 years ago was the growing frustration that Africa was always treated as a problem rather than an opportunity, be it through the lens of conflict, aid, crime, or increasingly migration. There's always talk when leaders get together at high level of opportunities and warm bilateral relationships, but from the UK side, these haven't been systematically developed in either hard or soft power terms. One example of the latter, I think we all know the African continent as a whole is pretty much 1/4 of the UN's voting population. Broadly 50 out of 200, 190 countries. That's a fact that's not lost on numerous other countries which court support around Africa from their heads of state down. It's something the UK hasn't done very effectively for a long time. But my feeling now is that we are even more urgently behind the curve. We need a whole reset in our thinking. This is because there are a number of globally significant factors in Africa which need a global response, which we are collectively far from generating. For example, take the proportion and value of unused agricultural land in Africa. I believe it's 60% of the world's unused arable land is on the African continent. Take the youthful population of Africa again. I forget the exact statistic, many of you will know. Does anyone know? Estimating 60% of the African population is possibly under 15, 20. Nigeria itself will be the 3rd or 4th biggest country by population in the world before too long. We have to ask, is this future global workforce receiving anything like the level of nutrition, healthcare and education needed to release all that energy and potential? I don't think so. We need to find ways to change that, working first with leaders and governments who want to make a difference, and by that raising the bar for others over time. Occasionally, I think we can catch a glimpse of such thinking. I read this week that the next climate conference, COP20, COP29, is a chance to show, quote, that investment in Africa is a smart investment for global food security. Absolutely. Hallelujah. But making that reality will need a lot of sustained planning and effort across global fault lines that sadly are becoming entrenched in competing directions. Again, I'm very happy to talk about climate issues, impacts on many vulnerable countries in Africa, and how really another great conundrum of the world is how can we develop economies in Africa in a less carbon intensive way than developed economies have been. So thirdly, finally, quite briefly, what's the role for diasporas, especially young people, young diasporas? I hope much of that follows from what I've said. I'll leave you with 5 thoughts. First of all, be your best, of course, you are. I'm sure you're making use of the opportunities here to bless and benefit the UK and other countries. Secondly, I would say look under the surface. What really is working? What stands the test of time? And what doesn't? What's misleading? What principles do you see at work? And what do you want to support and build? Thirdly, a time to step up. Be prepared to lead in your field if you have the aptitude or opportunity, and use that opportunity to raise the bar for others. Fourthly, don't give up. I'm slightly hesitant to quote Winston Churchill, but I think we all know never, how many evers was it? 5 or 6, never, ever, 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 ever give up. But the context I'm thinking of is from our time in Ghana, actually, when I used to talk to young Ghanaians who would do professionally qualified in London, elsewhere, be back in Ghana, homecomers, and get very frustrated because they felt that they came back with all the ideas, enthusiasm, qualifications, and people in Accra, mostly older people, kind of said, well, okay, but you still got to wait your turn. And so don't give up, do push for change. Finally, I said, be a politician. Or maybe, there was a comment today that in the US election, there's the highest number of African diaspora candidates ever. Got the exact number, a couple of dozen candidates, I think. I think it was from 16 different countries in Africa, are standing as candidates in US elections at various different levels, well, right up to president. So certainly consider standing for office here in the UK. We definitely need good people, but also maybe in other places too. And I'll just end by saying, Africa needs competent, well, not just Africa, we all need competent leaders with integrity who will deliver benefit from their people and for the wider world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. Wow. Can we have another round of applause for a very in-depth, far, wide-ranging talk there? And I imagine that those 5 points that Robin raised as recommendations at the end, we would definitely be emailing all of those out to you, because those are definitely call to actions. I saw earlier today a picture of a much younger Kemi Badenoch just getting ready to get into the political space. As I look around the room, who knows who we've got here? Adara, back to you.
So thank you very much. So we're just moving in very quickly to the panel session now. And for the panel session, I will be calling up the very first panelist who you have just heard from, Robin. He was a senior British diplomat specializing in Africa with 25 years track record in policy making, negotiating and operational delivery at the heart of governments in the UK and overseas. He was the head of mission for Lagos, Nigeria until 2011 and worked with the joint FCO DFID Sudan units, leading the UK efforts on behalf of climate vulnerable countries, working for peace between Sudan and South Sudan. So let's have a round of applause for Robin. I hope the seats are comfortable. Yeah, it's a bit high. Okay. So the next panelist we would have is Pastor Ayo, who is the CEO of the International Organization for Peace and Social Justice, with over 10 years of experience in conflict resolution and advocacy in Nigeria and in the UK. A round of applause for him. And the next panelist, who is Dr. Richard, unfortunately, he couldn't make it because, I mean, you know, today the transport hasn't been the best, but he's here virtually. So I'll just be reading out his profile. He's the Director of Peace and Social Justice, the President of Inside Deck Organization. He is a peace advocate and was the former Special Advisor to the Presidency of Nigeria. So let's just put a round of applause for him. You can hear it, he's online. And fourthly, of course, I will be moderating this panel. So hi everyone, this is me, Amadora. Yeah, I don't know if Saladi can get him on. But let me help you.
This is in. There's a opinion. On how to simulation.
I guess while the ladies are just sorting out the tech, if you're like me, some questions would have arisen as Robin was talking through it. Please do make a note on your devices so you capture those. And yes, I see a massive Dr. Richard behind me.
Yeah, we can see Dr. Richard now.
Hey.
Also, people can see. It's time for their open speech. So
Dr. Richard?
like you don't need it. It's time to.
Hello, good evening.
Okay, I think you can hear me because your lips
I
move
can
in
hear
response to
you.
that.
Dr. Richard, can you hear us?
He can
I can hear
Can
you.
hear us. We can.
Oh, we can't hear you. I think your microphone is muted actually.
No, you muted me. You
Okay, almost there.
muted
Yeah, we're
me.
almost there.
Well, we can hear Richard very clearly here online.
Okay, hopefully we are able to resolve this
You-
soon. So I think we should just start with the opening speeches by the panelists. So Pastor Ayo, can we start with you?
Okay. Well, just to say, I mean, I don't really have a speech, but fascinating to hear what Robin had to share. In my role as the head of the International Organization for Peace Building and Social Justice in the UK, we seek to mobilize the Nigerian diaspora, Friends of Nigeria, and the wider African family to do all of the things that Robin was talking about there. He talked about opportunity. He talked about the youth population and what that young population can be doing to serve Nigeria, to serve Africa, and indeed to serve the world. And in previous times till now, a lot of that potential has always been recognized but never realized. And what we would like to see in this dispensation is that every opportunity there is for young people, older people to invest in realizing that potential that has remained untapped for so long, that can be actualized. And as we speak on, probably could touch on a few things, but just to say there's good news. There is opportunities today for you and I to address all of the issues that exist around insecurity, around youth unemployment right across Africa, and all across the several different areas. But what it takes is for you and for me to step up, work collaboratively to make that change. Are we going to achieve it overnight? Absolutely not. But the step starts from tonight, I guess. So that would just be my opening comments. I'm looking forward to picking up on these issues some more, unpacking deeper questions that you may have in your mind, and exploring together how we can drive forward on this journey. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Ayo. So now we would have Robin.
Well, I mean, to me, this is the best bit of the evening, because it's always good, like we have done, to talk, to discuss. If I've said anything that anybody found difficult, please challenge me. I wasn't trying to, apart from on Brexit, maybe. But I think there are good issues to discuss. And I know from discussions we've had that your heart is to mobilise young people, everybody, to start to make an impact. And I deliberately said, because A, I believe it's true, and B, because we've talked about it, to do things at the state level is a way in. Nigeria is such a huge country. It's easy, as the UK government, we're often focusing on the federal this, the federal that. But actually, at state level, so much can happen. Like I said, even in Lagos. Can I give one quick anecdote about Governor Fashola? I went to see him at the beginning of his second term, and he said, I've had 3 or 4 governors from other parts of Nigeria come to see me in the last few weeks. And we come and we sit down in State House, Lagos, and the other guy says, Mr. Governor,
so he's the one that has said
you are fixing your roads. And Governor Fashola says, I am. And I said, well, how are you fixing your roads? And they said, well, the governor said, well, we have companies which we use taxes to fix the roads. And the other governor would say, my people are asking me why I'm not fixing the roads. And that's the point. He was actually creating a dynamic where other people were having to respond. And like I say, we don't load too much onto one person, but I think if more and more people do that, and as in everybody potentially here in the room and online is in a position to either exert that kind of leverage, including in the way you vote, dare I say. I was going to talk about diaspora voting, but maybe we can come back to that. Or even become the candidate, be the person who actually does the change as well at some point.
Great. Well, I'm going to pick up on that very point right there. I don't know if you've got Dr. Richard. Is he able to speak to us now?
I mean,
Yeah, we hope so. He needs to unmute.
Okay, Dr. Richard, can you unmute and say a quick hello?
Okay, good evening.
Oh, good evening. Well, I'm going to pass back to you in a second, but I'm just going to pick up on Robin's point first. You know, that point he made where one governor stepped up and started doing something dynamic and innovative, automatically put pressure on all the other governors right across Nigeria.
Yeah.
And so the other day I was in Akwa Ibom State. It was like being in Europe. It was beautiful. The infrastructure was first class. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Port Harcourt. And they're building bridges all over the place. But that happened because there was one positive image which was celebrated and put pressure on the others. I say that because in today's age where we've got so much power through social media, there is so much more than we realize that we can do to drive change right across Africa. Dr. Richard, on that note, I'm going to pass on to you for a few opening comments, I believe. Adora?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pastor Ayo. And I want to thank you, Robin, for a very good, brilliant presentation. The first thing I want to say is that conflicts distorts the power of diplomacy. A land that is full of conflict cannot play its role amongst the Committee of Nations. And a conflicted nation, either at war with itself, lacks the power to speak up and be taken seriously. It's like a man and a woman in a home, and where they are always quarreling. They will not have the power to confront adversaries when such issues of attacks or whatever happens to them. So a nation that is in conflict, one that is in perpetual conflicts, it will seem to me as one that has agreed or contracted to be powerless. So I'm glad that Robin was part of the solution to Southern Sudan. Sudan, whether south or north, even today, the world has ignored them in their conflicted situation, fighting each other, killing each other, from Darfur to Khartoum to Juba and all those places. So when a nation chooses the path of conflict or allows conflict, one of the points that Robin raised was the issue of leadership. When the leadership of a nation allows conflict to prevail, it means that all the potentials that we hear about Africa, that we hear about Nigeria, cannot be realized. So any nation that is conflicted, either in internal fightings or in external fightings, must do everything possible to resolve the conflict. You know, Nigeria can be much more. And we have not realized all that we could have been because we have allowed ethnic, religious, class differences, regional differences to divide us. And where that applies to what we are dealing with here this evening is that it makes it very difficult for us as a nation of over 220, 230 million people to speak up and be taken seriously, because people will look at us and say, look, go and put your house in order before you come here and lecture us. So essentially, diplomacy, the power of diplomacy is whittled down when there is continuous conflict in a nation. I think I will stop here in the meantime, just my own opening remarks, and I will be open to hearing what the rest are saying, and then I would be able to comment further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Richard. So the very first thing I want us to discuss is what has been on a lot of people's minds, which is Nigeria being known as the giant of Africa. How exactly does all these conflicts impact the influence, or would I say the way Nigeria is able to exert its influence over the region, over West Africa and over Nigeria, over Africa as a whole? So who would like to go first?
I'm happy to, and I think Dr. Richard has pretty much just touched on that. Nigeria, as you know, is also holds the presidency of ECOWAS at the moment. And so on the face of it, it is able to still exercise political and diplomatic power in the region. Robin talked about the fact that the whole of the UN is constantly quoting the bloc of African leaders because it can help with getting some vote or the other through. And so once again, on the face of it, it would appear that Nigeria still is holding sway in terms of political diplomatic power. But the reality of it is that it is nowhere near the sort of sway it should be holding or speaking into the key issues of the day. I mean, just to give an example, was it last week or the week before when African Bloc decided that they were going to raise the issue of reparations at Chogam, only for it to be battered away first by the Prime Minister and even David Lammy in Lagos yesterday, sort of kicking it under the carpet. And there's a whole bunch of voices coming. I'm not necessarily saying that it's about cash or it's not about cash, and it certainly ought to be about a lot more than cash, but to sort of just bat it away in the way in which it's being battered away, I think answers the question as to really how much power is really being held.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. I mean, I would just like to take the opportunity just to say I pretty much agree, Dr. Richard, with every word you said about the impact of conflict. I think it's true for certainly the UK, it's true for Nigeria, it's really true for every country that the kind of weight the country projects in the world is a kind of combination of different things. But the economic power of the country is important, but also the values of the country is important. And I think for those countries that want to exert influence, whether in the UN system or elsewhere, to be a functioning economy and a country which is visibly growing is actually a prerequisite. And all the negative factors, Dr. Richard, which you so clearly outlined, sadly also apply. To your point, I think West Africa is, depending how you measure, 19 countries. That in itself is a tenth of the UN voting population. And we've all been sad to see ECOWAS broken up by really fighting in the Sahel area. So there was a time when Nigeria or other countries in ECOWAS could command quite a significant global voice just by sheer weight of numbers. Sadly, it will take some years probably to repair that. Let's all hope it is repairable. But so many issues under the surface there. But yeah, the point we're making, that conflict detracts from the impact that a country, even the size of Nigeria, can have. I mean, let's face it, the USA is not immune to this. If we see weeks and months of division, disunity, confusion in the US, let's pray that doesn't happen. But if it does, there's plenty of leaders, I don't have to name them around the world, who are calculating, oh, maybe this is my moment to do this or that. You know, it has a direct impact. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Richard, can you answer the question as well? Did you hear the question I asked?
I heard your question. You're talking about the impact, right?
The impact on Nigeria's influence or Nigeria's ability to exert dominance across the region of West Africa.
Well, that was very well illustrated shortly after the new government came into power last year, when there was the issue of the removal of the US bases in Niger. And Nigeria, without full consultation, it's like the story of Samson, who didn't know that his source of power had gone. You know, his hair had gone. And he got up and he wanted to behave as he normally did. And suddenly there was no strength left in him. I think that was what happened to Nigeria when it thought it was still speaking as the Nigerian of old that was very powerful within the West African region. You see, internal conflict it makes you to lose what you might call your social contract with the people and with all your partners, whether internal partners or external partners. So when Nigeria made a call that it was going to, by force, make Niger to behave, Niger said back to Nigeria, bring it on. And Nigeria said nothing after that. Or well, if it said something, it didn't matter either way. So the point I'm making is that the impact of conflict is felt everywhere. It starts with a breakdown of social contracts that you have with your partners, whether those partners are internal or external. And then, of course, there is political instability, which leads to firefighting. You are fighting fire here, you are fighting fire there. In Nigeria, there are multiple fire points across the nation. If you go to the southeast, there is IPOB. If you go to the south-south, there is the fight for resource control, oil bunkering. If you go to the north central, there is the jihadists and the locals fighting. If you go to northwest, there is the Fulanis and the Hausas fighting. If you go to the northeast, there is ISWAP. So with all these conflicts all around the nation, there can't be political stability, no matter how much we pretend that we are politically stable in Abuja. So the leadership, again, going back to the issue of leadership, you know, it impacts every area of the political life when there is conflict in the nation, and it becomes impotent both at home and abroad. Impact.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Richard. So for my next question is, what role do you believe that the UK or the Western powers have to play in this whole conversation? I started with you, so I'll start here now.
I think you have different ways to answer this. I mean, I think in a way, one answer to the question is there is a lot of, because of the strength of bilateral relations and the history between, in this case, UK and Nigeria, there is a lot of cooperation that goes on behind the scenes. I know that, diplomatic, military, and so on, and that's good. I think it's in all of our interests that some of the forces, negative forces that Dr. just spelled out, are contained, and ultimately there has to be a military thing as well. But again, I think, as we've talked before, the full answer to regaining ungoverned space actually isn't just a military issue. It does involve governments, whether at state level or federal level, also showing citizens that they actually providing not just security, but development, growth, basic services, health, education. And sometimes we see that armed groups, terrorist groups, are able to occupy space, not just through violence, though sadly that is often the case, but sometimes by winning hearts and minds of local people, where they're saying, well, what have your, if I think of Somalia, which I've dealt with a lot in the past, it's classically the case there. Lots of groups would come along and say to Somalis, well, what is your government, what even is your government? Who provides you any services at all? We can do that for you. And guess what? People, quite understandably, I may say, think, well, actually, well, maybe we'll try these other guys instead. And before you know it, somebody's entrenched. So I think we have to be pragmatic and real about this. And I think I'm answering your question. I would urge UK and other governments to do whatever we can to support governments which are on the front line fighting such forces, both military and in other ways. May I just say one other thing before, to go back to what Dr. Richard said? You mentioned Sudan, Dr. Richard, and South Sudan. It is totally shocking what's happening there, and I'm so glad you mentioned it. I'm often a bit critical of my former employers, the UK Foreign Office, but I think in this case, again, I read that the UK's presidency of the Security Council in November every country, as you know, in turn has the presidency for a month. And the UK, I'm proud to say, is tabling Sudan and South Sudan as an issue to be dealt with in a much more globally visible way than has been the case, because there's so many other terrible things happening as well. So that's at least a start, recognising that we've really gone back 20 years in Darfur and places. How sad to say that. But anyway, probably never give up is probably a good thing as well. Keep pushing for progress.
Thank you. Well, just picking up from Sudan and looking at the lessons from Afghanistan, from Libya, from all of these other places that have failed or imploded, I think the first message to the UK government or to the West is we need to rewrite the contract and the ways of dealing with some of these countries in a way that is a win-win. It's almost as though we're using some old, outdated script, and we really don't mind if these people blow themselves up, or we're using some old script whereby we think we are managing to extract certain things, but actually we're all becoming poorer. In Nigeria, unknown gunmen running around in ungoverned spaces. What's that? How do you have an unknown gunman 4 years in? How do you have in the Southeast 4 years and you're still referring to the people as unknown gunmen? Well, do you really need a government after that? How do you have a government in place and you have a whole swathe of people running around like that? Now, I think what the UK ought to be doing is using its immense soft power and creating what I refer to as a new partnership of sovereign equals, whereby we walk hand in hand, step in step, the UK with countries like Nigeria, for the benefit of both Nigeria and the UK. On the global stage, we're facing much bigger problems and much bigger threats, and I say we now as the UK. We've got issues from other parts of the world. In actual fact, today, I think the UK needs Nigeria as much as Nigeria needs the UK. And I think you guys around the room, with the work that you're doing, are perfect people online to rewrite a new script and let it be part of the new action plans coming out of King George Street. Let it be part of the new policy forums that Kevin Badenoch's Conservative Party will be debating in the coming weeks and months. You have the opportunity to create the script and push it forward, because I think from there comes the new opportunities that lie ahead.
Thank you very much. So now we'll have Dr. Richard. Dr. Richard, did you hear the question I asked?
I think I did. You're asking for the role of the UK.
Yes, the role of the UK.
Okay. I said none.
You said no.
None.
None.
Oh, none. Okay. Is that all?
UK has no role.
Okay. The UK has no role.
That's a blunt way to put it. But of course it does. Of course it does. What you need to ask yourself is to go back to the question, the answer that Ayo provided earlier. Who is it that said that if you keep on doing what you've been doing, you will keep on getting the same result? I was with a gentleman last week, the week before, and he asked me a pointed question. He said, how effective are Western nations in resolving conflict in other nations? And I couldn't answer that question honestly, because the UK, the EU, the Americans have not proved to anyone that they have been able to resolve any conflict in a way that you can go back and say, yeah, this problem was there, and then when the UK came in, it was fully resolved, you know, or when Americans came in, it was fully resolved. What you get in most cases is that the problem escalates. So on a general note, you may say UK, America, EU, they don't have a role. But please hear me. They do have a role, but they have to look at their old playbook and ask themselves, these playbooks we've been using, are they working? What else do we need to do? So if you look at the UK, there are various segments and individuals or groups or organizations that should be working in tandem. So one is the government, the British government. It should rethink its approach to conflict resolutions. Organizing peace meetings and bringing conflicting groups to come and talk around the table, they have not solved any problem anywhere. None. You know? So we need to really examine that approach, whether it works. So the government needs to rethink its approach. The second group of people that I think hold the key to resolving the problems, the role in the UK, are the diaspora, most of the Nigerians sitting in the room tonight. Yeah, you have the role to, I remember Pastor Ayo is sitting there. We went to see David Lamy when he was shadow foreign secretary. And I didn't come away with the impression that somebody who was shadow foreign secretary fully understood the problem of what was happening in Nigeria. The reason, I don't blame him because he has tons and tons and tons of things to be concerned about as foreign secretary. The people I hold responsible for that are the Nigerians in diaspora that have not made enough noises within the UK system to come up with reasonable solutions to finding a lasting, effective solutions to the problems of conflicts in Nigeria. So that's the second group of people. The third group of people, when you talk about the UK, are the faith-based organizations. They have a role. And 2 or 3 weeks, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, we were at an event with Open Doors, you know? So these faith-based organizations, they have a role. They need to articulate their role very well. And the last group of people is the media. The media has failed in educating and informing the people sufficiently about the crisis that Africa faces. And I think it was Pastor Ayo who said earlier that UK needs Nigeria and Nigeria needs the UK. I think the media needs to recognize that. And Robin did say something that it looks like whenever Africa comes up, the Western nations see a problem child. You know, I think we need to start looking at Africa differently under the current dispensation of events. So my take on the role of the UK is that the government of the UK needs to redefine its role. The Nigerians in diaspora need to take up this mantle and say, this is our problem, and take it upon yourself, as PSJ UK is doing, to educate the British government, to educate the British people, about exactly what is going on in Nigeria. And by the way, we have, I don't know if you have copies. PSJ UK worked with INSDEC to produce a report lately. And we also have a brief to the UK government. And these are the kind of education that we need to make available so that people can be informed. And of course, the faith-based organization and the organizations and the media also have roles to play. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now we'll be moving on to questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so I'll just ask, both of you will just ask your questions before the panel answers all at the same time.
Thank you very much, sir. My name is Ola. My question is addressed to Dr. Richards and Robin. When we started the introduction, I said I'm a blank slate. And the reason for that is because I really want to be able to think about this discussion afresh, to really be able to reflect. And which brings me to this question. I'm a little nervous. Sorry guys. So as I said when I started, well, okay, good. Yeah, my question is directed, okay. Is the Nigerian question a question of, and this bit is directed at Robin. Is the Nigerian question a question of unsustained leadership model? The question on for example, context, Fashola, when he was governor, I mean, we could argue that he leveraged on the antecedent of what happened since 1999. The governor of, Governor Tinubu, then Fashola. So the question is it a question of unsustained leadership model? And also, one thing Fashola used to say, because I really followed that man back when I was in Nigeria during his tenure. He used to say that government is a continuum, right? So, and this is me sort of bringing this whole conversation back home to, the question of what's actually wrong with Nigeria, So he used to say government is a continuum. And if government is a continuum, does that mean that we should just, give them room to do what they have to do in terms of, what's the foundation laid by Fashola, then laid by Tinubu, then Fashola, then of course what we have currently, Ambode and Jide Sanwo-Olu, the current governor of Lagos State. Then the second question is directed at Dr. Richards. He made some very beautiful points which had me thinking, and he said the Nigerian issue is an issue of class differences, religious differences, regional differences. Now, when we think about this three core points, it sort of like points at sociological/psychological effects for the most part, because when you think about class differences, it's not exactly strewn in political context. It's more of human beings, like how I see you, so psychological. So yeah, rather than which points I did, yeah. So yeah, that's my question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. I really hope that we're able to remember everything you said, but let me just take the second and also the third question.
Thank you so much to the panel for your insights. I couldn't help myself, but what Mr. Robbins said earlier about the BRICS and a change of narrative, a change of economic structure in the world. And yes, I just wanted your take on the Nigerian involvement in that. And
Thank you very much. So the last question before we...
Thank you. Please indulge me to sit as one of the journalists. I think this is a sequence to what Dr. Richard said. I just want to ask Nigerians here, How proud are you sitting here and allowing and wanting and inviting other nationalities to come and debate about you? You have what it takes to resolve your conflict. How many British people come to Nigeria to resolve theirs? How many Americans come to Africa to resolve theirs? How many Europeans come to Africa to resolve theirs? I'm tired of hearing this every time. Oh, we have to involve Britain, we have to involve EU, we have to involve America. And we're not tired of hearing the same thing. And we call ourselves elites. We are in Britain and Britain hasn't gone through us. What's the matter with us? Is it this blackness that doesn't go into the brain? Honestly, it's like I just want to run out from here. This is not what I came here for. Honestly speaking, what's the matter with us? Why can't we resolve our own differences? What's the problem? What's the issue? Why do we have to invite other people? If you like, invite Britain from now till tomorrow, they will not do anything. Because I am speaking from personal experience. I did all my education in this country and I know what I went through. We can resolve this thing ourselves. If only we can remove tribalism. That's our #1 problem. And then secondly, religion. And we are done. We are home and dry. Once we remove, you are from here, you are from there. I mean, you young ones, you intermarry. Yet, when it comes to tweeting, you are tweeting against other tribes and other religions. Why? There's so much hatred among us. If we can let go of this hatred among Nigerians, honestly, and see ourselves as one, our problems are over. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So after this round of answers, we'll take just one more round of questions, then we'll conclude the panel session. So who would like to start?
Okay, thank you. Well, there's some very deep issues there. I mean, I think I'll try and take those in reverse order. Forgive me if my memory needs a prompt at some point. I think in response to Lady at the Back and what Dr. Richard said, I mean, I actually agree. I think you're right. There is nothing that can't be solved within a country. Every country has to dig deep and do that. And I was personally trying to get into that area as well. I know, Master, you used the phrase about needing, the UK needing, and I don't think I actually used that in my comments. I have sometimes said, my belief is the world, if I can put it this way, please don't mishear me, the world needs Africa, Nigeria to come on stream for the reasons I said, because there's so much natural potential and resources locked up in the African continent, speaking generally, which are globally significant, which I did say. So I really mean that. I think we totally agree, get away from this idea of we're commenting on you, you're commenting on us, we're helping you. You know, we all need each other, actually, to work at a much deeper level to release this, because it's globally significant issues. On the going backwards, I think the middle question was about BRICS. And Nigeria. I did comment on that in my comments because I've noticed that Nigeria and Uganda, you might think, why Uganda? Because BRICS tends to be the big economies in the world, which is not Uganda, let's face it. But the president of Uganda possibly thinks he's part of that group of leaders that deserves to be together, which kind of is part of my problem with it. So I'm not standing here from a UK or any other point of view saying countries shouldn't talk. Of course, they can talk to each other. I'm just saying for Nigeria to be officially now a partner country of BRICS is being pulled down a certain road. And we haven't talked much about China and Africa or Chinese loans, all kinds of things we could get into. But, you know, no help comes without strings attached. So I think countries have to be very careful what company they're keeping, I'll put it like that. On the, I think the first question, which I think what I took from it was the idea of continuum of leadership. And I think Governor Fashola was someone who probably was reflecting pragmatism in what you were saying, i.e. I suppose ironically, we could say if you're an autocratic ruler, you are the continuum. You can actually be around for 30 or 40 years. I mean, there are still people who I don't have to name them who've been president of somewhere for 40 more years. Wow. But I suppose one of the kind of frustrations of democracy in a way is that leaders do change. Like I said, that's the whole point. Leaders are accountable, we have term limits, you know, and I think some of the autocrats in the world sometimes look and think, well, you're the fourth leader from this country that I've dealt with. You know, I know much more than you. And there's a kind of hard realpolitik in that, in a way, actually. But it's, you know, I think in a sense, it's a price worth paying. And I think maybe the governor was saying, before me was someone else, after me will be somebody else. What I will try and do is set a standard, which the next person, my neighbouring peers, and also the people who come after me, will have to reach. And we come back to exactly the point about the diaspora, the voters. This is where the pressure comes from nowadays, I think, not from other people standing around saying you should do it our way. Nobody wants to be saying that anymore. It's about what actually works and where will the pressure come from. I'll say one last thing about conflict, again, echoing a lot of the hard hitting points Dr. Richard made. Another group of people who really can be effective levers for peace between warring parties are women's groups. It's well known that in the Liberian peace negotiations back in the 90s, we were in Accra, I think, when there were Liberian women's groups camped out around the hotel where the peace talks were taking place, exerting pressures on the leaders every day when they went in and out of that hotel. And that was a group that was missing from the Sudan talks that I was involved in. We pressed for them to be invited, etc. So again, there are important drivers and levers for peace, which are within the continent and within the countries affected. And I think the way things are going is to increasingly use them as the main levers for change.
Thank you. Pastor Ayo, do you have any comments on any of the questions?
Well, I mean, we'll go to Dr. Richard to pick up on the first question, first question. But really just picking up on the whole thing around the continuum of leadership. The point I really want to hammer home tonight is the fact that we all have to raise and amplify our voices to achieve whatever it is we want to see. And whether that's the continuum of leadership, however it is we define it, we have got a role to play. At PSJ UK, we have several different groups. We have a policy group, a creative writers group, we have a legal team, we have a development group. And the more of us that plug into some of these more ordered groups means we can start to build something that goes beyond what I often see in the space. Lots of people complaining about lots of things on social media, on the internet. And I think that is what begins to
I've lost you. I can't hear you, Pastor Ayo.
The tech team are working on it. I think you might be able to hear me now.
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. So just before coming across to you, I just wanted to touch briefly on the point that Auntie made at the back. It does take the indigents, whether at home or in the diaspora, to resolve the nation's issues. And as Dr. Richard himself often talks about, the role that the diaspora plays to resolve the issue in its back home, in its home nation. And that's a topic for another day. Please sign up at PSJ UK so that we can invite you to a separate conversation about in great detail. But the one point I wanted to make is that it is not only the home country that resolves the issue. There is a role. We have to recognize that we are living in a global village and that there are multiple players and they do have roles to play. Should they be the one leading the effort? No, we should be leading the efforts to resolve what's going on in Nigeria. But the dynamics is that there are interplays because there's so many interlinks. I'll leave it at that for now. Let's go to Dr. Richard.
Okay, can you
Thank you
hear
very
me?
much. So yeah, we certainly can't see him on the screen here, but you could just look at the display here. The projector is overheating, so that's the reason. So don't panic. You can just look at the screen here and we can still hear him. So Dr. Richard, over to you.
Okay. Yeah, let me take off on the last point that Pastor Ayo was beginning to address about the role of the diaspora, the elite, which all of you are. We can't do it alone by ourselves. I often say that nations are saved by the people in the diaspora. Israel, and if you are a Bible believer as I am, and you have Nehemiah, he came from outside, Joseph, several Bible characters came from outside to deliver their nation. And so diaspora has a very strong role. But diasporans alone cannot do it. They must work with friends of the diaspora. People like Robin, who have experienced us, and the wife, who have experienced Nigeria, and they know what egusi soup is and what ogbono soup is, and they have sampled our cuisine and listened to our musicians and know about our culture. They are the best people who can help to explain Nigeria to the host nations. So we must work hand in hand between the Nigerians who are resident in the UK and friends of Nigeria. At PSJ UK, we say that a lot, friends of Nigeria. We like to work with them. There was a question on tribalism, religion, hatred amongst Nigerians. That is a phenomenon that is everywhere among the nations. You know, you just need to open the papers and see what's going on in the US right now. But we must work to minimize it. We must all work to minimize hatred, class, tribalism, regionalism, religion. You know, it's a deliberate. You say, somebody say, if you see a beautiful garden, it didn't make itself. You know, somebody worked on it. I think we sit down and we expect that things will get better by themselves. No, they won't. No, they won't. Somebody has to take responsibility to make it happen. The last thing I like to say is Ola raised the issue of leadership model. He says, is our leadership model unsustainable? I said, no, it has nothing to do with leadership model. It has to do with people. Everywhere there are conflicts, people created those conflicts, not the model. And if you want to resolve those conflicts, you must go back to people. Leadership, people, leadership. And this point was well proven by the Singapore, the founding leaders of Singapore in the 60s, mid-60s. People will always say, oh, Singapore is a very small place. It's not as vast. The population is not as big as Nigeria. I said, no, they had the same problem. They had ethnic problems. They had religious problems. They had class problems. And the Malays were more, and they claimed to be the owners of the land. The Chinese were much more educated. The Indians were there. So they needed a way to bring all of these groups together and make them work together to deliver their nation. And so it was the leadership working with the people that delivered Singapore and made it a great nation. So it's not the model. You can bring any model, you can bring the best leadership model from the best place. If we are not ready to get our hands dirty and work and be determined to succeed, it's not likely that a leadership model all by itself can save us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Richard. So I'll be taking the last round of questions now. So after this round of questions, any other questions you have, just write it down and we'll make a note of it. And surely you would receive all the answers after the event. So first question, there's someone online whose hand is raised. So can you please type your question in the chat bar? That's Kolade, yeah? No, I don't think there's any need for that. Just type in your question. So while you're typing it in, let me take some questions within the room. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the last.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I've really enjoyed this talk and I've learned a lot. My name is Tolu and I'm a student of global health at King's College. My question is for all three panelists. Kind of touching on the point that you raised, Master Ayo, at the beginning about the realization of youth engagement that doesn't really seem to happen. How can we equip the youth in Nigeria and in the diaspora so that they're able to drive change and youth engagement isn't just a platitude that people use? Thank you.
It's not really a question, more of a what do you think? Obviously, you mentioned briefly like sustainability and the climate crisis and how that can exacerbate insecurity. And you mentioned how focusing or like taking in like carbon emissions and growing your economy, how they can be factored in together. Because obviously the climate crisis, some may argue, is a Western issue, right? They caused worse pollution, but with developing African nations, they have to also factor this in, especially Nigeria being resource rich. So I just want to hear your opinion on that.
Hi everyone, my name is Abdul Samad, and my question is, going back to the what said at the back, that we had so many problems. We have so many problems in Nigeria, which are tribalism and lack of accountability in the leadership. So what I want to say is that yes, we do have a lot of problems like leadership or tribalism, which this is a problem within Nigeria, and so many countries have this problem, and specifically maybe in terms of ethnicity, religion, and things. But the main problem that I know that everyone is talking about is about the problem of electoral illiteracy. Electoral literacy is very limited within the Nigerian context, and that is what so many researchers, of course, are focusing on. But also, one of the things that I believe that we should focus on is how can Nigerians and diaspora also contribute to the give their own contribution. I think the excuse that we give is that we are limited, but we tend to limit ourselves in terms of the contributions we can give, and because a lot of people don't understand the meaningful of election campaigns, and also poverty is one of the factors that that is behind those things. So how can we Nigerians and diaspora give our own contribution and also start to speak up? And also what are the other things that developed countries, citizens of developed countries do or tend to say within their own problems that we are not doing, like the issue of budget transparency, which we know in the UK in every year there's a term called participatory budgeting, where citizens of the UK come to debate or give their own insights on how the budget is being spent. So how can we also diverse to those kind of things to also hold our leaders accountable for all the actions? Thank you.
Hello, hi. My name is Ramadan. So basically, I will give a few pointers then before it leads to my question. It is undeniable that Nigeria gives effective leadership role when it comes to addressing issues within the West African bloc. Undeniable. But one thing I've observed, I'm from Sierra Leone, basically, and if we look what is happening in Nigeria, there are common factors that can be found existing within that bloc. And I think within the state level, like I'm outrightly saying that within the state level, we must contextualize diplomacy. What I mean by this is that using the local approach when it comes to addressing some of these factors, bad governance, poverty, which is one of the main key issues that is affecting not only Nigeria, but Ghana, Sierra Leone. So using diplomacy at that state level, intrastate level to address these issues is very key. That's one. And also talking about us, the UK, Nigeria partnership and all of that. First, I want to say we should have close coordination at our bloc to see how we can address our own issues before we can be taken seriously. So Nigeria can provide leadership, undeniable. We cannot dispute that fact. But however, I think Nigeria should also work with others within the bloc coordinatively to address these common factors. Once we solve our own problems, then at the regional or the global context, we can see that any actor, be it state actor or non-state actors, you will see, once they see that effective coordination, then you see the triple effect of them coming on board for us to solve our own problem. So that goes back to her question, that we first have to realize our own potential when it comes to using diplomacy as an instrument to solve our own problems. So at the global level, we saying that we have to be partners, equal partners. I have a different saying. I mean, my view on that is different because why? It is questionable. Structurally, we cannot say we are equal partners. Why? Because of maybe economic disparities. When Africa sits at the table, or let's say Nigeria or any other African countries, we know we cannot sit right because we don't have the economic leadership. But however, so now what my question is it not time for us to decolonize this concept of diplomacy and using the bottom-up approach rather than the up-bottom approach? Thank you.
Thank you. And the last question, which is the question that was typed online. I think this question is directed at you, Pastor Ayo. So does your organization, PSJ UK, can PSJ UK partner with or organize other diaspora groups in the UK, Europe, and North America and serve as a pressure group to let the Nigerian government make people-friendly decisions that can solve the insecurity problems in the country? Diaspora remittances and investments make up the number 2 source of income for Nigeria, and their pressure will play a big role in this direction. Did you get the question?
Yeah, thank you. Now, obviously, in the interest of time, we'll give very quick, short answers, and I think we should also split the questions amongst ourselves. So maybe I can pick up Tolu's question and the one that's directed to me online, Abdul Mahdi. of the summit. Your question should go to Dr. Richard, and I think Robin, you can pick up the young lady's question on sustainability and remind me, Ramadan. You answered your own question by yourself. I don't know. We'll leave that one with Robin as well. So I can actually wrap the answers to the two questions to Tolu and the person online. Your question really was around young people and what's happening in practice, practicality, rather than all this constant talk about youth bulge and young people. And really, that is what PSJ is seeking to do differently, to move away from the constant talking around things and to try and put things in place that make things actually happen. And that's why I'm tying it into that question. No, we can't, we don't deal with every single topic like all the various issues. However, it is true that we can, with a lot more support from the Nigerian diasporans, friends of Nigeria, we can form a pressure group on all of these really important matters. But beyond doing pressure and advocacy, which we do on the one hand, coming back to you, Tolu, we get on the ground practically impacting stuff. Robin mentioned earlier on that going to the sub-national level, we are able to do a lot more. So for instance, I can tell you that in one of the states in the North Central region, we're talking with the government, they're providing PSJ UK with a building to take young people through and equip them with skills that allows them to serve. Well, that's however many hundred young people who will not be fodder for non-state actors, and incidentally will be earning way beyond what it is that they ever thought they can earn, and are serving themselves, their communities, and serving the world. Well, if tiny little PSJ UK, who's not even a proper structured organization, is able to start doing that, what I'm saying is by the time you guys all come on board, we could do a lot more of that at a much higher level. In the last week, we've had conversations with an organization that is seeking to do that on a much bigger level in Kano. Now, Kano and the Northwest are all of these places where we have lots of Almajiri children who perhaps will feed in the bandits and terrorists of tomorrow. I mean, that could come from anywhere in Nigeria, but I'm just using that as an example. The quicker all of us start dropping down schemes that is mopping up all of these people, the earlier we will get to a place where there is peace and social justice. And just finally, to mention that if you take a look in this day and age that we're in, all of these unicorns that are coming out of Nigeria and the ability to drop tech companies and all the things that could be done, there is zero reason why we couldn't set up a whole bunch of things that mops up a whole bunch of people. And incidentally, the more we do it, the stronger we can put pressure. Back to the earlier comment, Robin.
So I'm going to comment very quickly on three things: sustainability and climate, also a little bit about accountability, which you mentioned, and change, who are the change makers. So on sustainability, you're absolutely right. I think the voice of the African continent is absolutely paramount in the global climate negotiations. Actually, one of the best jobs I had to talk about was I was the UK envoy for climate vulnerable countries to promote to Lagos. It was all ancient history now. The last Labour government was in power then. But the point was we were trying to generate a voice for climate vulnerable countries, not just within a single continent, but worldwide. So you had powerful countries in Africa, islands in the Caribbean, Pacific, Nepal, mountainous countries, lots of climate vulnerable countries talking together about their the situation they were in. Now, a lot of that debate was about the existential threat to island states and so on, which is true, not denying that. When I then left that job and we went down to Lagos, I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, there are probably more than 20 million people now around the lagoon in Lagos living within a foot or two sea level. You know, sea level rise is just as much, in fact, an issue for a lot more million people in Lagos than it is in Mauritius, not diminishing the risk anywhere. So that voice really does need to be amplified. And I think it is coming through in the UN negotiations. If you Google around, there's a climate vulnerable forum and other things which are still going, amplifying that voice. So nobody in Africa needs to apologise for putting that on the table. And I think that's very much there now. What comes of it is a different story, and I alluded to what I think is the really core difficult issue, which is how do we, like I said, how do we help industrialize countries across the world, developing economies, in a way that doesn't, should we say, repeat the mistakes of the past by the develop. Now, it's a nice convenient argument if you're in a developed economy, but it's a genuine dilemma for the world. There are ways forward which are being worked on. Secondly, I'll just touch on the point you made about accountability. I mean, you talked about citizens holding budget scrutiny and so on. I mean, let's just remember that these are issues in every country in the world. I mean, if you've opened a UK newspaper or whatever in the last few days, is there a 22 billion black hole in the UK economy? You know, it's an active debate going on. So these are tricky issues for everybody. But I think the answer is the free press, the free debate, all the things that, to be honest, are inconvenient for people who are more autocratic. And that's why I said earlier, democracy is a tough thing for the leaders, actually. You know, the old phrase about all political careers end in failure. If you're in a democracy, that's true, because someone's going to vote you out one day. You're not going to die in office with a great state funeral. You're going to be thrown out and, you know, go down, do your shopping along with everybody else. So, but if you're a leader, and the kind of people I'm sure in this room online want to have and want to even be leaders who are like that, who actually understand that there are deeper principles at stake beyond the personal, obviously in the family or even the tribe, and who realised that the best thing for the country as a whole and even globally is to stick to principles which are often tougher for the individual, but which pay off in the long run. And finally, can I just put in a vote for diaspora voting? Not really been touched on, I should have mentioned it. I think I'm right in saying Nigeria has voting, overseas voting. Is that not the case? Oh, okay, that's convenient because it kind of proves my point in a way. I thought Nigeria did. Again, if you are a ruler with an autocratic leaning, you tend to resist diaspora voting for the very obvious reason that the people, your people that have gone abroad have already, in a sense, voted with their feet. They are the people who want change. They've left for whatever reason. So you therefore resist giving them the vote. So I think that's something to push for. I'll just say one last thing. From a political point of view, if you are someone who actually wants change, we've tended to focus this discussion on forcing change on people. But if you're a leader who actually does want to change, you're sitting here nodding to everything we're saying. Who is your constituency for change? You know, who is going to vote for you? Who is going to support you when you stand up fashola-like on these principles? Well, like I said, the people of Lagos did when they got the chance. But we need to clearly support people who are doing the things we want. And to be honest, I think that can be regardless of, dare I say it, ethnicity, political party, even ideology. Let's support the people who are doing the things which are forward-looking. Should I stop there? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as I said earlier, this basically wraps up the panel session. So if you have any questions, please write it down. We'll make sure, because all questions need to be answered. So please make sure you write down your questions. So I want to quickly read these comments that someone dropped online. The person said, I strongly believe that political leaders are sometimes helpless in addressing conflicts because the people are highly ignorant or biased. Unfortunately, considering that most conflicts are rooted in politics as well as one form of identity or other, and the media these days also lean one way or the other. And the media these days also lean one way or the other, so much so that their coverage of these conflicts deepen and worsen the crisis, oftentimes rather than make it better. My question then is, how do we hold the media accountable? Because those who perpetrate crisis cannot really do so if the media isn't complicit. So yeah, this is the question. Thank you very much, Kolade, for this question. But we wouldn't be answering it right now. We'll be answering it later after the event. So as I said, any questions that you have, please write it down. So I want to take final comments. Does anyone have any final comments? I would also take final comments from the panelists, but does anyone in the audience have a final comment or remark? Okay, let me take comments from the panelists then. Do you have any final comments?
Well, just to say thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here and listening.
I do have final comment. It looks like since I left your view, you have forgotten me.
Dr. Richard, we have forgotten you. We are really sorry. We actually haven't forgotten you. We are just trying to wrap up the...
Okay, so Dr. Richard, will you do your final comments first?
I insist on doing my final comment.
Okay. Final comments first or final comments finally? Go ahead, Dr. Richard.
Final comment first. Now, I just want to thank the organizers, really, and also because when I was introduced, the Adora said that traffic kept me. I actually had hoped to be there because I thought I'd be in London at this time, but I'm actually in Lagos, and it's very warm here, very nice weather. I can feel for you when you get out of that hall this evening. And the second thing I want to say is to say that I'm actually an alumnus of Westminster. That's where I took my PhD. So I think I heard that one of the one of the lecturers, one of the persons in the audience is a lecturer. And I want to thank you for the wonderful thing that the University of Westminster is doing. It's my comment is on the question of how do you equip the youth. I think Pastor Ayo has already made some comments on that. And another person says, how do we get people to act? One word: unite. There are too many organizations that are acting in silos, too many individuals that are acting as individuals. But I believe that in spite of the kind of efforts that some Nigerians have made to the point of being recognized nationally and internationally, if you check their history, you find that they were working in silos, they were working alone. I can't imagine how much progress, how much impact we will make if we learn to work together and work as a team, as Nigerians. If you go and ask Kemi Badenoch how she got to where she is now, she will probably tell you that she worked with other people other than Nigerians. I have experienced individuals who should benefit from the collective power that we have, but who are not. I hope tonight, before you go, you will leave your name so that we can send you electronic copies of many of our publications. Hunger in the Midst of Plenty is a PSJ UK publication. Nigerian Silent Slaughter is a US PSJ UK publication. I don't know if we have copies there tonight. Unraveling Nigeria's Insecurity Crisis, the Urgent Need for Lasting Solution is a PSJ UK publication. Insecurity and Education in Nigeria, Context and Challenges. It's a PSJ UK publication. On the brink, Addressing Nigeria's Security Crisis is a PSJ UK publication, and several others. So if you leave your name behind tonight, we should be able to get you the electronic copy if we can't get you the physical copy. Thank you very much for coming. This has been very enlightening. I want to thank Robin and the wife. Thank you very much. God bless you. Have a good evening. I enjoyed the medes that you guys are going to have right now.
Thank you, Dr. Richard. Appreciating you joining us all the way from warm Lagos. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight. Some of your questions we didn't get to answer in full. Some of it we didn't get to answer at all. But like Dr. Richard said, this is a conversation that is only just beginning. We didn't even bring any of those publications that he talked about tonight. But if you are in the room and did not sign up on the Eventbrite platform or on the PSJ UK website, please make sure you leave your details, because we will send an email out and we will include the links to those various publications with you. And if you feel that we've not fully addressed your question, or you haven't had a chance to ask it, please ask a question and we would all commit to answering it in much greater depth. And most importantly, we invite you to plug in, get involved. You are not just part of the solution, you actually are the solution. So please do sign up, and we look forward to journeying forward in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I really enjoyed this evening. Thank you. Thank you for your engagement, including online. Thank you, Dr. Richard. It was great to hear you. Hope we meet again, maybe in Lagos. You can invite me. And I'll just say one last thing, partly in response to the final question, I think, from Kalade about just remember that in democracy, in a sense, we never arrived. It's constant care and maintenance, it's constant vigilance, it's fighting the same battles again and again. So whatever's happening in Nigeria, the UK, you're right, what was the phrase you used? We are the change, if you like. We are the people. Yeah. So it's not always going to be someone else doing it. We can actually do it as well. So I would really encourage people to press for the things I mentioned in my 5 points, but just to be engaged and support the change makers, maybe even be the change makers at some point. Thank you.
Great stuff.
Thank you very much. So that concludes the panel session. Thank you. You can go back to your seat now.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I hope you're not too tired, but we still have a little bit more things. So is Jesse here? Okay, so Jesse is just going to share with you a few minutes, something that he has been working on that will be very, very beneficial to you students. Unfortunately, he had some slides prepared, but there isn't any projector right now, so.
To connect to
you. Good evening, everyone. So, I'm Jeffrey. I graduated from his school, data analytics, and
yes,
oh, great. All right, thank you. So yeah, just here to talk about how we can leverage technology as youth, as individual, how we can leverage technology to foster innovation, entrepreneurship, how we can use this to foster economic stability in conflict zone. Now, I thought I was loud enough. But we know 1994 was just behind us. It's just behind us, and we know the Rwanda conflict. And look at Rwanda today. They've turned the narratives around. Using technology, using innovation, the youth were involved. People like you and I. Please just go to the next slide. I'll very fast. The next. Yeah, just people like you and I, they turn the narratives around, and today the country is doing well. So what am I here? I'm just here to tell you we can do it too. And how do we do it? We do it by innovating. We do it through technology. Now, who knows about Team Bernalillo? Yeah? Team Bernalillo.
I love it.
God bless you. But you can imagine a lot of people don't know him just because. But I want to tell you something about him. Okay, he was just bored. He was a youth. He was in his youthful age. He was bored, and he was trying something on hyperlink. So I can't do it now. I can click on a word and it take me to something a different word. I don't know, maybe most of us will play around it, but it will be interesting to know that he was just in Geneva. He was having his a project, and he wants to be able to click a word that will link him to his library, or click a word that will link him to his friend's computer, and he then developed the HTML. From the HTML, it feels like, okay, if I can do this, I should be able to do it maybe by everybody in this room. If I click on Tolu, if I click on Tolu, I'll see Tolu's profile. And that brought us to what we know as WWE today. Somebody was hungry. Somebody was not satisfied. Somebody needed to do extra. And here we are today. We're enjoying the World Wide Web. Even most of us don't know Team Bernalillo. Now, somebody has done something too. Who is a Nigerian diaspora, who thought about the conflict back at home. And this person has brought up a product, a service. It's called Bida. So with Bida, a lot of people, I have a consulting background, and a lot of people are bored of their 9 to 5 job. I was just running down for mine now. And I'm bored too. I'm looking at a way for every one of us, we're looking for escape. I don't want to get to 13 age before I escape. I want to escape as soon as possible. So how do we do that? Somebody has sat down, okay, I want to put ideation into, like, okay, now, so most people that are saying in the industry, they are scared of, okay, if I leave this job, how do I start my own? And how do I scale? Listening to Edemont yesterday, they were like asking him, okay, what advice will you give to business owners? He said they should have resistance, like something like they should have resistance to pain or pain tolerance. Because most times people go into trying their own thing, they fail and they don't want to do it again. But this time around, somebody has gone through, okay, somebody has studied people's business model. It has been put into a product whereby you have an idea, all you just need to do, go to the website. It will give you a picture of everything from the ideation state, connect you with the founder or the person, the owner of the project, and then you will see how to ideate that your little idea, make it into execution state. It's called Bida. We can all type on our phone Bida, and it is an innovation of someone. But why am I here today? When I saw the program, I was like, oh wow, but I think this is a beautiful one. But to solve this conflict, just like everyone here has said, I think it is important that as youth, both you, myself, we need to start thinking about innovation. We need to put our hands, we need to innovate. We need to, now, Pastor, you said something about mopping up the people. Because now, if you don't mop them up, they will cause trouble for you tomorrow. So how do you mop them up? You make them engaged. You make them engaged. And how do we get engaged? By thinking out of the box, being innovative, and creating a solution. That is how we get engaged. So yeah, it has been a beautiful one. And just because we've stretched the time, I won't further do that, but I want to tell you, we are the solution. You, myself, we can start building. There is this saying, stay hungry. Like, I mean, you don't have to just stay hungry. You need to feed, you need to do something about your hunger. So the word is actually stay hungry, stay foolish. So I'm like polite enough not to say it as it is, but you need to do something about your hunger. And when you do something about your hunger, you bring out results. And that is where we can use economic stability to put down the fire of conflict and insecurity. All right, thank you, everyone. BIDA is BIDHAA. BIDHAA. So it will take you through the process of your ideation, your process of building up your product, and up to the execution point. All right, thank you, everyone. Let's have a nice evening.
Thank you very much, Jesse.
Yeah, thank you.
So for the final bit, which I'm sure very much of you are very excited about, internship announcements. So as I had previously advertised, there are some internship opportunities opened up specifically for Westminster students within PSJ UK and within Afford. Some of you know Afford, but not every one of you knows PSJ UK. So PSJ UK is an organization that we have the CEO here. It's an organization that advocates for peace and social justice. And it's also an organization that is made up of many Nigerians in the diaspora as well as Africans. So if you would like an internship within the organization, I think there are like 3 internship opportunities open right now, right? Yeah, and those internship opportunities are for you. So feel free to send me a message or send me an email, and then I'll send you the link. It's very unfortunate that we can't project it right now, but I'll send you the link to sign up or, to sign up or to apply directly on the PSJ UK website. And then with Afford is also working on a project with the African Union. So I don't know if every one of you is aware, but the 2025 theme for African Union is justice and demand for reparations. So the African Union next year is championing some movements to call for reparations and for, justice for everything that was done to the African continent, or everything that is being done to the African continent. So in order for you to participate, or if you would like to be a part of that project, and if you would also like to have African Union on your CV or on your resume, you would be interested in taking part in this internship. So I think there are like 3 internship positions open as well. 2 of them are research, and 1 of them is project management. That's within the African Foundation for Development. So if you're interested, also send me an email or send me a message. Should I say my phone number or my email? Okay, I'll just email every one of you because unfortunately we can't project it right now. So just send a message and then we'll get the internship. So behind you, we have some nibbles that are available. So if you would like to proceed now to participate in the dinner and the networking session, also don't be shy to walk up to anyone, even if it's someone you don't know before, even if it's someone who was a panelist. Just talk to everyone. We're here to network and meet with people. Thank you, everyone. Oh, sorry. Very quickly, so sorry, but can we all just come to the front for a group picture? It would be nice for us to have a group photograph. People online, we haven't forgotten about you anyway.
We'll take a screenshot.
We'll take a screenshot of everyone online.
All right, come forward, guys. We're going to do this picture together. Yes, I say. Okay, we can step together with so people can feel very much. Yeah, yeah. Is it not basically you or do you not group? So, back into the cab of the beach. Oh, right. I don't know what. Yeah. All right, let's all come together. Auntie, no, we did. Auntie, we're going to move the picture to where you are if you don't come.
Guys, no one go further than the lady in the blue. If you guys go behind her, that's
okay.
Right.
Come, Auntie. Come. Auntie has to be in touch with you. Yeah. All right, squeeze in, guys. Squeeze in. Okay. Auntie, come straight here, please.
Sorry, yes.
No, Anthony.
Yeah, so you wouldn't belong to it.
And so on the very edges, and it's only going to breathe a little bit more. Everyone, all right, is you all about? Thanks for coming. Dominic. I'm not getting anyone past that.
Can you go back a little bit?
Yeah, I just don't even remember the chair. Okay. And everyone looking at, we're going to do a few, okay? And 3, 2, 1, smiling. Lovely, a few more. And then a nice happy one, everyone, big smiles. Yeah. Future peace. There we go. Lovely. There. And then we're going to do 1 minute, so everyone just wave at the camera for me. 3, 2, 1. Lovely. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. But don't run away, guys. Grab on these feet, look back. Stay great. Yes. I'll charge you guys everyone this. Yeah, you guys go for it.
That's why I'm like. So help me, or can you go and grab some snacks so that you can all do that together while we eat? Thank you. Please don't let our food waste, please. No, I don't go here. Oh. So I'm the event and campaign manager for PSJ UK. Oh, are you? Yeah. Yeah. So I work there, but I also have like a lot of things that I do. Like, so this is like me giving back to my community. Yeah. Yeah. Are you here? Oh, what do you study? Oh, I did international law and diplomacy for my undergrad. Yeah, then I did business management for master's. Yeah, but I still use it. Yeah, that's why I'm in PSJ UK. So I'm into marketing. Yeah, and I also have like a business that I run. What do you do? Event management and marketing. So event marketing as well. Yeah. I was working oh, really? No, I thought about it. Like event marketing, which is basically, yeah. I do love customers. Yeah. Not like that. Yeah, but it's just it gets a bit tiring. Yeah. It makes sense why you're really good at like multitasking. Yeah. Full time. So full time. Currently, I do marketing for like an industry for an organization, and I do events and company. Yeah, 1 minute. 1 minute.
Sorry, I was actually. Yeah,
Send me a message. International relations, yeah. Oh, nice. I did international diplomacy for undergrad. I actually enjoyed this for so much of the so I took everything. So I'd rather be. However, I'm big on entrepreneurship. So in terms of like how people to develop themselves in terms of like their entrepreneurial skills, really that it can I feel like not everybody can be in bosses, but you can take your entrepreneurial skills. Margaret, yes. Margaret, come and give me your number.
Yeah, let's reply my email. We have to reply to everything. All these banks. Thank you.